All right, let's talk Las Vegas Raiders. Disappointing three-game stretch for the Raiders, of course, trying to build some momentum to get this season turned around. But in the hustle and bustle of where the season sits with a bunch of other teams, the Raiders have an opportunity right now to pull off a massive deal in terms of improving their roster. I think for the short and the long term, there's a lot of speculation, but there's a lot of momentum behind this. I think this is a great opportunity for the Raiders. And when there's this much smoke, there's bound to be fire. We'll get to all that reporting in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, this Las Vegas Raiders team sitting at 1-3, obviously a disappointing result of what we've seen through 4 games, but they do have a lot of key young players that really need some opportunities to grow in development. Of course, Ashton Ginty, look at Jackson Powers Johnson, who was for whatever reason not playing. Now he's back into the mix. Brock Bowers is outstanding. You look at, of course, at Thornton, Jack Besh at wide receiver. They've got some young guys. They have some veteran guys, of course, like Max Crosby and Geno Smith. I still think Geno Smith's competent. I think the turnovers have been a rough start to the year, but I think he'll figure it out. I think he'll turn it around. But the Raiders at 1-3 are in an interesting position here to take advantage of a massive opportunity. And this time of year, you run into some teams that think they're contenders or think they can maybe pull themselves into a magical season that are willing to overpay for assets on other rosters. And smart franchises, smart front offices take advantage of these opportunities. We talked about the Seattle Seahawks in a prior video doing a similar situation when they traded Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos with that massive haul. I'm sure you Raiders fans remember the Broncos, for whatever reason, thought they were one Russell Wilson away from winning a Super Bowl. They traded a lot of stuff, and it didn't really work out too well for them. The Raiders are in an opportunity here to trade away one of their veteran assets to get not quite a Russell Wilson haul, not even remotely close, but a good solid haul because there's a lot of demand when it comes to this player. And we're talking about slot wide receiver Jakobi Meyers. Now, Meyers is a guy, if you spend 5 seconds on the internet doing any sort of research, there's all kind of reporting, all kind of speculation across the National Football League with like a dozen teams saying, go get Meyers, go get Meyers. Meyers is available. Meyers linked to this team. Meyers linked to that team. There's a ton of reporting. Let's just throw up a couple examples. Just throw it on the screen right here, Meyers, if you don't mind. It's just one of these things. And this is just two, right? You go across, you spend 5 minutes on the internet, you find a million other. These are just two we pulled easily. It took 2 seconds. You can see you've got the Giants are listed as some wide receiver trade candidates. CBS Sports, this the Giants account here. Sleeper Giants cited a CBS Sports account. You can see Jakobi Meyers listed as a receiver candidate for the New York Giants, and you can see Andrew Filipponi from the Steelers. He's a Steelers reporter talking about how Jakobi Meyers now back into the trade market. Says the Steelers should do that. In fact, they might do that. And you go across the National Football League, there's teams, the 49ers are involved, right? There's a bunch of different teams that are, kind of at least reportedly, and there's some speculation here that Meyers is available to be traded and that they're going to go after him. Now, normally with this kind of reporting, we take it with a big honking grain of salt, right? Okay, there's usually a lot of speculation and a lot of reporting about certain players becoming available, certainly with some teams when they think they're contenders. But here's where the Jakobi Meyers situation is a little interesting. And let's go and pull up our second graphic here just to remind Raider Nation. So this was a long time ago. This was August timeframe, right? You guys remember this. Raiders Jakobi Meyers requests trade after contract talks stall. Las Vegas has no plans to deal wide receiver per rap sheet and Tom Pelissero. That's per the Around the NFL account on X. So this was, again, towards the end of training camp, right before the season. Jakobi Meyers, he wanted an extension. He wanted more money or more, security. He wasn't getting it from the Raiders, so he wanted a trade, right? It was very widely reported and confirmed. And, it was clear that he wanted a trade, but the Raiders said, listen, man, we don't want to deal you. And that was at the beginning of the season. Now that we're 4 games into it, now the Raiders are in, I think, a really advantageous situation because there are teams that want or feel like they need Jakobi Meyers. In August, September, there are maybe a few teams that thought, we'd like Jakobi Meyers. We may give up a 6th-rounder for him. We may give up next year's 7th for him. Why not? We'll take a flyer. He's a veteran player, slot receiver. He could help us out. Now there are teams like the Steelers, like the 49ers, and half a dozen other squads that are like, we need Jakobi Meyers. We think we can win it all this year. We think we're really, really good. We need a slot receiver. We've got injuries cropping up. We need a veteran slot receiver. We can't rely on a rookie. We need a veteran slot receiver, and we need him now. And when you're in a situation like that, if you're the Raiders, you take advantage of it. Look, Spytek is smart. He's not an idiot. Pete Carroll is smart. He's not an idiot. Remember, Pete Carroll was the head coach with the Seattle Seahawks when they dealt Russell Wilson. John Schneider, the general manager for the Seattle Seahawks, very similar stylistically to what Spytek was doing when he was working with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in terms of being able to wheel and deal and make big trades and think outside the box. Now, it's not a guarantee that Spytek will make this trade. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. But I think at this point, with these many connections, there's a lot of smoke here enough to say there may be a little fire behind the scenes. And I think the Raiders should make this trade, and I think they actually will. And here's why: because they like Jack Bech. That's the key. A lot of teams don't make trades like this because they don't like their young backups. They don't like their talent behind the starter, in this case, Meyers. And they're just like, listen, we don't want to move on from our starter because we're going to be a world of hurt. But they like their young wide receivers. In fact, they really like them. They said it all off season, all training camp, all preseason, right? This gives you an opportunity to play those young guys. And I know a lot of people are like, is this punting on the season? I don't think so. I think Bech is a good player. I think Thornton's a good player. I think they need opportunities. Ashton Genty's starting to figure it out in the running game. Brock Bowers is going to get his targets, right? I don't think you get necessarily a huge amount worse if you go from Meyers to Bech. You may even get better, get younger, more explosive, more dynamic. Right? This is a football team that I think right now is caught in a weird position. They've got some veterans, specifically on offense, but they got some youthful energy too. I think they need to commit wholeheartedly to the youthful energy. And if they do that, I think they'll be better for it. They'll be explosive. They'll be dynamic. Right now, they're kind of in a middle ground where they've got too many mistakes because of their youth and some inconsistencies, right? Some volatility, a lot of new players, things like that. But they're also not veteran enough to have the wherewithal to overcome a lot of those mistakes, right? And right now, just commit to the youth movement, right? That's, I think, what the Raiders should do, and I think they will do that when it's all said and done. Jakobi Meyers, on the last year of his deal, an opportunity to trade him away to get something significant in return. We're not talking like first-round picks or anything, but something of real value in return, taking advantage of a desperate team. That's a smart move to make, and I think Spytek, with Pete Carroll's backing, I think they make that move. All right, Myers, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But first, Raider Nation, in the comment section below, 2 questions for you guys, 2-parter here. Do you want Jakobi Meyers to be traded, right? Just face value. Do you want him gone? Forget what you get in return. Do you want to see him gone and you want to see Jack Bech get opportunities? What are your thoughts on that? And number 2, assuming he gets traded, whether you liked it or not, what do you want in return, right? What is the capital in return? Whether it's a 5th-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, I think they could get a 3rd, to be honest. I know that's a reach, but stranger things have happened with desperate teams in the National Football League. I think they could get as high as a 3rd and maybe a 4th and a player. Who knows when it's all said and done? But what would you want in return for Meyers? Let us know in the comment section below. But Myers, I will throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest out of Las Vegas?
Yeah, like I think it's a very entertaining, really interesting thing going on. But I think when you break it down, kind of, you start to look underneath the hood for the whole possibility of this Jakobi Meyers trade. There is a lot of factors that point to it's a really good decision for the Raiders to do this right now, but also B, that it's the right time and it's set up very well. So first off, I'll set up some things that I think what makes Jakobi Meyers valuable is 2024 best season to date, coming off that big 1,000-yard receiving season, his best season by far, by over 200 yards to date. So there's the value. People saw what he was able to do last year. He's off to a hot start this year for the Raiders, being their leading receiver. So there's value in that. And I think that's really, really good. Obviously, there's injuries going around. Other teams on the league, the Steelers in particular, everyone says, okay, Steelers, they're looking for a lot of different stuff. They're looking for wide receiver position. Other teams had injuries at the wide receiver position. People want the wide receivers. So to feasibly get a team's number 1 wide receiver in Jakobi Meyers, I don't think that's the case. I think there's, a couple of good receiving options on the Raiders. Nobody is really necessarily number 1. I wouldn't say Jakobi Meyers is significantly better than some of the other guys on this team because I think they got a lot of great talent on this team. You can feasibly say, all right, we're trading the number 1 guy, coming off one of his best seasons. Go ahead and do that. And then for the Raiders, the last thing is you don't have to pay him because as good as Jakobi Meyers has been, he's been a pretty good player. Let's face it. Like I said, last year, let's count him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th year into the NFL. He comes off of his first 1,000-yard season, the only 1,000-yard season to this point. This isn't a guy that you want to pay multiple millions a year to be a wide receiver because that's what wide receiver position is demanding nowadays. It's a big investment. Jakobi Meyers, as he's a decent player, he's not that guy, though. That's not the guy that you want to go out and really give a ton of money. But there's also some really good, things when you break down what the current people on this roster are doing as to, like you said, they like Jack Bech. There's a lot of good things going there. Let's talk about what the Raiders receivers are doing that is so good. You look, Meyers obviously leading the pack by like 30 yards as a leading receiver. Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker also doing really great. Dante Thornton Jr. doing great. Jack Besh is explosive. He hasn't gotten a lot of touches, though. Yeah, I think he could be even better. But if you look around the NFL, an interesting chart I came by the other day, Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton Jr. are number 4 and number 5 in the NFL as far as their separation percentage, getting open, getting down the field. So you've got two guys on your roster already. We knew Thornton was good. He's big. He's fast. He's able to get out there. Trey Tucker doing a lot of great stuff. These are guys that can get open and get downfield. And these aren't guys, this isn't just like a limited number of snaps. Both of these guys have like pretty much 100 snaps this season already. So this is a big sample size. They have some of the most on this list, some of the most receiving snaps of these guys. So they're getting open, they're getting downfield, and their separation percentage has been very, very good. So these guys are strong receivers in an offense where they can get open. And on top of that, you've got Brock Bowers is doing great things. I think Jacoby Myers leaving opens up this offense for other players who I think are maybe getting hindered for a lot of targets, a lot of things having to go to Jacoby Myers, opens them up, and we can see what really is in a guy like Dante Thornton, Jack Besh, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker. Can these guys be the backbone of the Raiders offense? I think the answer is yes. There's a lot of talent on this roster. I think some of it is being a little bit underutilized. Sometimes you got the number one receiver. People feel like you need to feed him the ball. Not the case here. I think this could be a really smart move for the Raiders.
And it's important to understand, right? If you look at Jacoby Myers' contract situation, this is per overthecount.com. The Raiders are kind of in a no win, no lose situation. The situation is kind of stagnant as it is. If you look at his, in terms of his salary the rest of the year, it's $10 million on a base salary level. So the rest of the season, if you add, say, call it 10 games, you're talking about another $7-8 million, right? $7-8 million bucks that you're going to owe Jacoby Myers that you could theoretically save. After that, you're going to have about 6.5 dead cap. That's just going to happen no matter what. So you're not talking about a big cap move one way or the other. This is just a two-parter to get some draft capital to shore out the rest of your roster and also to get the young guys some opportunities. And like I said, I think steering into the youth movement is the way to go, right? I think that's the right approach to take. And I think the Raiders, based on all the reporting we're seeing, they're going to have an opportunity to do that. I honestly think it's a really good chance they pull the trigger and make this trade, and I think get a real steal the deal. I think they'll find some team, probably the Pittsburgh Steelers, if I'm willing to bet, that's willing to overreach for Jacoby Myers.